Welcome to the Indie Author Showcase, the podcast by indie authors for indie authors. I am your host, multi-award-winning author Chad Robert Morgan, and independent author most voted to need a haircut. So, with that said, I'm rocking the mop look. Let's get started. This is going to be a little bit of a different podcast than I normally do because I still don't have a book to showcase. I am going through one that's pretty good, but it's a tome. It's like this thick, and it's taking me time. I'm really looking forward to next week, which is the Thanksgiving break. I'll have some time off. I'm going to do a lot of driving. I'm going to eat up a lot of audiobooks. So hopefully we'll come back after the Thanksgiving break. We'll get a couple shows out. Then we'll do our best of Christmas break. And then we'll come back in 2026 fresh and getting to it. But this is the first time I have a podcast without a book to showcase and without an interview. So why am I here? Well, two reasons. One, as I mentioned, next week is Thanksgiving, so we're already going to be off. I didn't want to skip 2 weeks. And I also got some updates. So a few things that we've talked about previously on the show. One is this weekend, as of this airing, right? Tonight, day one of CreepIE Real Festival. That's going to be here in Santa Ana. It's a great outdoor Halloween Christmas mashup event. More horror than Santa, but that is a fun event. And friend of the show, Josh Spero, is going to be there with his book Hal-Lore-Ween and Halloween Volume 2, which is out now. So if you have a young one who's kind of interested in scary stories, but you want to kind of keep it G or PG, check out Josh Spero's book Hal-Lore-Ween and Hal-Lore-Ween Volume 2. That is going to be right there at CreepIE Real Festival. CreepIE Real Festival here in Santa Ana. That's this weekend. So moving on to January 30th to February 1st, we are going to have CreepIE in Ontario. Now, don't buy your tickets yet, because if you watch the show, you know that they're going to have a promo code for every vendor. In every show, they do a contest with the vendor. The promo code that's used the most to get your discount to get into CreepIE, that vendor gets a free booth next year. So wait until the promo codes are ready. Get your tickets with our promo code to help out the podcast, help out Spectral Inc. And you really want to be at this CreepIE. This is their 5th year. They're going to have, for celebrity guests, they already had Bruce Campbell, Ash versus the Evil Dead. They had Robert Englund, the Freddy Krueger. Now they've added Cassandra Peterson, a.k.a. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. So now we have a triple threat. And those are just the headliners. They have other celebrities coming as well. They have several actresses from the Nightmare on Elm Street series. So if you want to meet your favorite Freddy Krueger victim, they're going to have Jamie Presley. They're going to have other cast members from Ash vs. the Evil Dead. So this is going to be a huge CreepIE. So you don't want to miss this one. That is January 30th to February 1st. The third big announcement I want to make is, it was just last week, I was talking about one of my favorite indie movies, which is The Gamers' Dorkness Rising. This was technically the second movie in this series, because the first one they did, The Gamers, it was like just on YouTube, I think. I'm not sure. I just barely found the original. I was looking for it for a while. There is also a part 2 and 3 that I did watch. 2 had some good gags. 3 I wasn't too interested in. They just announced, like right after I put that show up, The Gamers' Dorkness Falls is coming. Now I say they just announced it. I think they had a Kickstarter starting a little while ago. But apparently they have enough to launch a trailer. So their trailer for this launched like the day after I published that video, just by coincidence. So yeah, this should be the 4th or 5th movie in the series. Depends on, I guess Gamers wasn't really a movie, so this is number 4. But this one looks to be a direct sequel to Dorkness Rising. I'm really excited. I will say I thought the trailer was a little underwhelming, but from what I'm gleaning from the trailer, it is the people from Dorkness Rising. They're older. They had the DM and the female character had gotten married. We learned that in the next movie. They had a kid. We learned that in the next movie. So now they're adults and their child is now a teenager, and so it's dealing with her getting older and looking to be more independent. The kind of thing parents always have to deal with. My son is almost 18 and I'm dealing with the same shit. So I'm really excited to check out this movie. And again, a huge fan of Dorkness Rising, so Dorkness Falls is definitely on my to watch list. So I wanted to get that announcement out there. Last thing I wanted to mention is, so the last episode, God, I need a haircut. The last thing I wanted to talk about is the last episode was about, I was talking about how when I write my books, I try to build up a little bit of a cliffhanger per chapter to encourage the reader to keep reading. And I said I write it kind of like what you do with TV series. Now keep in mind, soap operas have been doing this for decades, right? That's why people watch they watch their stories and it never stops, because they usually have 3 storylines that are kind of stacked on each other. And they're staggered, right? So you have one storyline that's just starting, you have another one that you're right in the middle of, and then you got the third one that's just starting. And so that way there's always one that is reeling you in. So even if that first one stopped, that's fine, because you're in the middle of the next one. And that's why they're never ending, right? And people keep tuning in because they want to know what happens next. Well, and when I write my book, I write it kind of similar to the soap opera, in the sense that when the chapter ends, there's a little bit of unfinished business. You don't need to have like a super huge cliffhanger, right? You don't need to have somebody literally hanging on a cliff, or somebody with a gun to their head or something like that. Look at a good example of this is Has Been Hotel. They just had season 2. The first episode of season 2, and I'm trying to say this as spoiler free as possible, but the episode ends with Charlie kind of feeling a little depressed, and then suddenly she gets a message from heaven. She gets some news, she gets some updates, and then the messenger just disappears and Charlie's freaking out. That leaves it on a kind of cliffhanger, because now you're like, okay, how's Charlie gonna, what's she gonna do with this news? You just dropped this in our lap, and what are we gonna do with it, kind of thing. There's another part where the bad guy sets up a trap, and the trap's not sprung, it's just set, right? And the victim is being lured in. It's one of those things where, meet me at such and such a place, and they're expecting to meet somebody else, but it's actually the bad guy. We don't know what the trap is. We don't know what it's not imminently going to be sprung, like the guy's going to show up in like 30 minutes or something like that. But it's still setting that up, that you're like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? What is the trap? What is the bad guy's plan? We don't know. I tell you that to, and again, that's kind of how I write chapters in my book. And that's one reason why one of the feedback I get is people are constantly reading. They're like, I couldn't put it down. I had to keep going. I was going through the YouTube channels and checking out a few um, other writers and editors who post writing advice, as you do, because I've gotten some success as a writer, but I don't necessarily think that I've mastered it. Like, there's always room to learn, right? I'm in the game industry. It's constantly changing, so I'm in a constant state of learning and relearning, because once you get something mastered, it's going to completely change and you have to learn all over again anyway. So I'm always looking to improve my craft and get advice or ideas from other people, right? That's one reason why, for example, Brandon McNulty's YouTube channel is so interesting, because I will watch that, and sometimes he'll talk about things that I've kind of already intuitively figured out, but because he's actually got it defined and spelled out, it makes a lot of sense, and it helps to kind of solidify that, right? Instead of this kind of nebulous, this seems like it's a good idea, it's like, this is why it's a good idea, A, B, and C, that kind of thing, and it really cements it down. So, I'm rambling. Point is, I was checking other YouTube channels, and there was one from Alyssa Matesic. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. And her video was about the Zeigarnik Effect. Zeigarnik. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And I was like, what the hell is that? Right? And it's like, this psychological trick will change how you write forever. I was like, okay, well, let's see what this is. And so I start listening to what she's talking about, and I realize what she's talking about was what I was talking about, right? Like, it's the same idea. She does more with it, right? It's a really good episode. You should check it out. I was focusing on like one aspect of the Zeigarnik Effect, where she kind of covers the whole thing. The important point I'm trying to say is, I did not realize that was so defined, right? Which shows you just how amateurish I am. But she's talking about something that I intuitively figured out on my own. But other people have already, they've not only figured this out, they've studied it, they've named it. And what it basically comes down to is, we have an innate desire to wrap up unfinished business. So when you're writing your chapters like that, to where there's unfinished business, is probably the best way to do it. It doesn't have to be a cliffhanger, just unfinished business, right? The person's getting ready for the date, but hasn't left the door yet, or right when they're about ready to leave for work, the phone rings. Is it important? Is it spam? We don't know, but it ends with a phone ring. And so you're like, okay, next chapter. What was the phone? What was the call? That kind of thing. She talks more about it. One of the things that she talks about in her video in terms of a through line is just the idea of a ticking clock, of having a deadline. That is also an example of the Zeigarnik Effect, because you just got that feeling that you have to get to the finish line because you have a deadline, kind of thing. And it doesn't have to be like a bomb. It could be like, you're trying to get the wedding organized, right? Because that's a set date. You have to go to trial because you're a lawyer or a judge or something like that. So having that kind of ticking clock is also an example of the Zeigarnik Effect, that can help motivate your readers to want to keep reading and make your book a real page turner. So anyway, check out her video. Again, she describes it way better than I am. I'm butchering her work badly. I just wanted to bring that up because, again, I basically was talking about the Zeigarnik Effect without knowing that there was such a thing as a Zeigarnik Effect. I had intuitively kind of figured out the Zeigarnik Effect without knowing that there was such a thing. And in reading it, you're realizing that actually applies to more things than just what I was talking about. So just taking that topic and let's expand it and blow it out. And so check out her video. That's really good. So again, that's really all we're going to do on this podcast. It's going to be very, very short. I need to get this out. We're not going to have one next week because of Thanksgiving. We don't have a book to review because I'm still reading. But I did not want to go 2 weeks without a podcast. So keep it short and sweet. Quick update video. We'll see you in a couple weeks. And until then, keep on reading. Hopefully by then I'll have a haircut.